Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this. Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
Google has found a new way to piss me off.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Every time I say it, it's going to suck even more.
May I present to you the cat?
I am Nadella. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, Wes, and I'm here with Landon.
Hello.
And Caleb.
Hey!
We are here to talk all things tech this week. You know, this is exciting this week because there's hardware.
Yeah.
So,
so much
you know,
hardware.
there's a lot of hardware. A couple things. Well, let's get to the first thing on the docket here. We got an event made by Google. Why don't we go ahead and let Landon take that one away?
Yeah, listener. So if you weren't confused by last week's first not made by Google announcement, this was the actual made by Google event with all the Pixel hardware, because they can't have Nest hardware at the Pixel event because reasons.
Right.
But anyways, this event, they announced everything we thought they were going to. All the Pixel 9 phones, Pixel Watch, Pixel Buds Pro, all the stuff. It was an interesting event. I did watch it. I did not watch it live, but I did watch it after the fact, and it was fine. It was a Google event. The best part about this event, though, was they did live demos of all the AI stuff. And it went just as you might expect it to. Some things worked great, others not so great. But they wanted to make sure that we knew that they were doing these demos live, because a lot of keynotes in the past few years from both Google, Apple, and Samsung, for that matter, are showing a lot of AI stuff that will be coming at a future date. So it's like, okay, we're showing you a video of how it's going to work in the future. Best case scenario. And that's fair. But Google is like, we want to make sure that we're showing you live demos so you know this stuff is actually launching on the phones. We know it'll work the way that it's supposed to work. And I actually kind of like that.
Will it?
Yeah. Yes. That's the kicker there. But I actually really like that, because then it's like they're not just showing you stuff that you might be able to see at a future update at some point. No, all the stuff that they showed at this event is launching on all the phones, which is great. I love that. What I did find really interesting, though, so they started off talking about Gemini and AI stuff before they announced any hardware, and the first couple demos were shown on a Samsung Galaxy S24 and a Motorola Razr Plus. Not Pixel devices, Samsung and Motorola devices. So that was interesting. And the first demo, or one of the first demos they showed, was this guy. He took a picture of a concert poster for Sabrina Carpenter. It showed like all the different tour dates. And after he took the picture, he asked Gemini, he's like, check my calendar to see if I'm free when she's coming to San Francisco this year. It took a minute and then popped up a little thing. Cannot show this information at this time. It's like, oh, so he tried it again. Didn't work again. So he's like, let me try a different phone. He grabs a different phone, another Galaxy S24, but it did work on that phone. So it's like, maybe, okay, that other phone was not quite set up correctly. I don't know, but the one phone, it did not work. The other phone, it did finally work, and it actually gave him the information he was looking for. Kind of cool. But I just thought it was really funny that he had to actually switch devices for it to work, which, again, live demos, things can go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't hate it. It was just interesting that they, had the guts to actually do that.
Yeah, it's gutsy to do live demos of stuff like that on stage. Just ask anybody who ran keynotes for Steve Jobs.
Yes.
Those folks were literally taking their lives into their hands, because Steve loved a live on stage demo of a device or a feature. But if it didn't work, if he had to apologize to the crowd, you can bet that not only was the person in charge of setting that feature up for him for that demo getting fired, but they might genuinely have been getting dumped in the harbor after after the event was over. Like, it was legendarily not a very chill dude, Steve Jobs.
You don't say.
So yeah, it's gutsy to do that kind of thing up on stage. And like, yeah, the video clip of this dude's demos failing was all over the internet all week long, which it's funny, and honestly he handles it pretty well. But I'm just that's gutsy, Google. That's gutsy. Good job, especially in a world where Apple is currently just pre-filming all of their events. It's just a movie, guys. There's no live anything about any of that stuff. So
and like, it was funny because like, you could see on this guy's face the first time he goes to try it, you could tell he's kind of nervous, hoping it's going to work, and then when it doesn't, you could see his face just changes a little bit, and then it doesn't work again. He's like, oh crap, is this not going to work at all? And you could just tell he was just really, really hoping that it would work on this other device. And then when it did, you could see the sigh of relief come over him, like just a huge weight lifted off his shoulders.
Yeah.
It was great. I felt kind of bad for him, but at the same time, it's like, this is what's potentially going to happen anytime you do anything live.
Oh, yeah. Well, and this is what's probably going to happen to users across the world when this feature launches.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to know that, like, yeah, Google's aware that this is not bulletproof.
Yeah. But it was interesting. But like I said, I do appreciate that they're doing all this stuff live to show that when it does work, and that is good.
Yep.
So I like that. The other thing that they showcased, the other big thing that they showcased before the announcement of the phones was this new feature on Gemini called Gemini Live, which is basically her, more or less. Like, I mean,
oh, good. That's fine.
I mean, it's very similar to what ChatGPT did a while back before they got sued by Scarlett Johansson, rightfully. This time, Google did it smarter and didn't use, a voice very, very similar to Scarlett Johansson. They did say they have 10 different voice options, and they all sounded pretty good, actually. At least the ones that they showed. They showed about 3 or 4 of them, but the ones that they did show sounded fine, and it did. Like, you could have a conversation with Gemini, and it actually worked fine. It was, pretty good. It's one of those things that I don't think I would ever do. Maybe once to say, hey, I did it. It does work. But even then, I'm like, I don't talk at or to my phone hardly ever. Like, so
I feel like there's a subset of people that are going to get really hurt by this feature because they have a hard time separating reality from fiction, and they're going to be like, but the computer does talk back to me. it is really alive, and it loves me, or whatever. Like, it's just exceptionally, and I'm not throwing shade. I'm not saying this is like, the World of Warcraft neckbeards that can't make friends, can't interact in a social environment or anything like that.
What are you trying to say?
Listen, I'm being very specific. This is not a group of people specifically that I'm targeting. This is just anybody who, for whatever reason, is in a really poor state of mental health and is experiencing extreme loneliness for whatever many, many, many different reasons that could be. I just feel like there's going to be a subset of them that are going to start talking to the AI on their phone, and they're going to develop unhealthy responses and unhealthy connections to an algorithm. Guys, like, this is not sentient. It cannot reciprocate. It's not real. But there's going to be a subset of people that are going to be unable to separate the reality of the situation versus the appearance of the situation. And in a moment of extreme vulnerability, they are going to be emotionally, socially, and mentally damaged by this feature. Now, whether or not that's going to be a large enough group of people to make anybody change anything about these AI products that they keep shoving down our throats, that remains to be seen. But it's not great. Last week we talked about the friend little AI amulet thing that you are supposed to wear and is supposed to mock you for being bad at Halo or whatever it was. And I don't just all of this stuff, all of it is like, this really is this the direction we want to go, developers of technology?
Yeah.
Like I can tell that you've been watching science fiction films for the past 20-25 years because you are like directly referencing them in like your advertisements and your product names and that kind of thing. But I feel like you took exactly the wrong message from every single one of them. So, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I do think this is going to be better than what the friend was advertising their AI to be, because like it is in the name, it is meant to be your quote-unquote friend. This is just Gemini as it stands today, which is basically there to give you information, and it has gotten better. They've kind of integrated Google Assistant, which was working great beforehand, so it is better than it used to be, which is good. I mean, it wasn't hard to get better than it used to be because it wasn't good before. But it is still mostly there to provide information, but you can still have some sort of a conversation with it. And the example that they gave was like a question answer type conversation. It wasn't just, hey, how are you doing today? You know, things like that. It was more of that.
In order to get like potentially damaging conversation out of these digital assistant style AIs, it requires you to kind of feed in specific inputs and ask it for specific pieces of information and that kind of thing. But it can totally be done. We've been seeing journalists do this with ChatGPT for months, and it is potentially very, very like bad.
Yes.
And I just feel like this is once again another case of the scientists being so caught up in whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think whether or not they should. And I just need that on a shirt or something. I need a sign. I need a sound bite or something like that. I'm going to send you an audio clip of that, Landon, that you can put on your soundboard. And then I'll have a prearranged signal that I can hold up so that you can just play that. And we can get Jeff Goldblum saying that every episode instead of me. Because I feel like I am saying it just about every episode these days. So
I mean, it's true, and you should, honestly.
Oh man.
But yeah, so that's Gemini Live. It's an interesting thing, and like Caleb said, all the journalists out there, all the tech journalists are going to push this to its limits. That's kind of their job, and I'm glad that they're doing that, because then these companies can see, oh, that's something we didn't think about, and it needs to change. And generally, these companies do fix these issues relatively quickly because they don't want it to blow up any more than it already has. So that's good.
Yep.
All right. Now, moving on to the phones. So, as we already knew, the phones are the Pixel 9, the Pixel 9 Pro, the Pixel 9 Pro XL, and the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Gosh, man, I hate that name.
So, have we already added that one to the worst names of the year? Yeah, it's on there.
We added the 9 Pro Fold then when we first heard the rumor that that's what it was going to be called.
When it was rumored. Yeah. Yep.
And unfortunately, it did come to pass that is the name, and it's awful.
And to summarize why this is so bad, listener, it's pretty straightforward. It's not the 9th version of the Pixel Fold. Not even close. It's the second. It's the second version of the Pixel Fold. I get them not wanting to call it the Pixel Fold 2, though, because they want to associate it with the rest of the Pixels that it was introduced next to. Yeah. So it's a Pixel 9. Okay, this is the Pixel 9 family of phones. I'm all right with that. Pixel 9 Fold. Great. It's the Pixel 9. It's the one that folds. Perfect. This is Great. Beautifully done. Pro Fold. Google, I'm going to need you to stay after class so that we can talk about why this is bad. No, and like, there is somebody out there is going to be like, well, yeah, but they need you to know that it's based off of the Pixel 9 Pro, not the Pixel 9 vanilla version. And I'm like, it's not based off of either of them. It folds in half. It's a completely separate thing. Like, what are you talking about? It's got nothing in common with the Pixel 9 Pro that it doesn't have in common with the Pixel 9. Meaning, it's the same processor. It's the same basic architecture for the device itself. But in every meaningful way, it is different. It's got a completely different display, a completely different design. It does have most of the same cameras, right? If not all the same cameras.
They're slightly different, but most of, yes.
Like, the rear cameras are all the same. I think the inside camera is different.
Actually, the rear cameras are slightly different because the phone... we'll get to it, but it is thinner. So,
right.
When it's unfolded, it is ridiculously thin.
Yeah.
But
so it's... The cameras are mostly the same, but there are some differences, which is that's the difference between the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro is the cameras are mostly the same, but there's some differences. You got an extra camera on the Pro, and I think a slightly upgraded, one of the cameras is slightly upgraded. Or actually, are they the same? I'm trying to remember the stats.
No, the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro phones have the same cameras except for the telephoto. So yeah, it's as different from the Pro as it is from the regular 9. So why don't you just call it the Fold so that everybody knows it's different? Like, why are you calling it a Pro? Because then people are going to be like, oh, it's the same as the Pro, but it's not. Google. Tell us how you really feel, Caleb.
Man. It's like they had me there for a little bit. The whole it's a Pixel 9 because we want people to know, like, hey, all of these have the same tensor chip in them, and all of them have the same software update path that they're going to be on, and all of them have the same, features that they're going to be launching with. That's great. Yeah, call it the Pixel 9 Fold. That makes perfect sense. It's very logical. I love it. Why did you put Pro in there? Why?
Who knows?
And this is me just shouting into the void because there is no good answer for this, and that's why it's one of the worst names of the year. Anyways, go on, Landon.
That was great.
Listener, I promise I will stop interrupting him with rants at some point, probably.
It'll probably be after I'm done talking about the event.
Oh,
which is fine. I'm okay with this. It's fine.
No, it's okay. I'm shutting up. Everything else is fine. The rest of the phones are fine. The phones are fine. I just really annoyed about the name.
I mean,
names, man.
I don't blame you. That name is interesting. Like, I agree with you. It makes sense to go with the Pixel 9 name scheme because, like you said, a lot of the stuff about these phones is the same. The design language is the same. The announcements the same. Like, all this stuff is the same. But yeah, the Pro doesn't make sense to me. But it's Google. They're going to do what they're going to do, I guess.
Yeah, they all do what they're going to do.
All right. Well, let's go through some specs really quick. Let's start with the Pixel 9. Oh, actually, you know what? First, before we do that, I want to talk to Apple for a second. Apple, you see what Google did here. They have 4 phones, but really they have 3 main phones. This is exactly what you need to do. You have a Pixel, You have an iPhone. That's one size. You have an iPhone Pro. That's the same size, but better specs. And you have a Pro XL, or Max as you call it. That's the same as the Pro, but bigger. This is ideal. Ready, go, Apple. Follow Google's lead here. I love what Google did here. It's fantastic. Apple needs to copy it. Ready, go.
Apple freaking keeps complaining about how nobody's buying their off-brand, non-vanilla iPhones and are instead just getting the vanilla iPhone or the Pro. And I'm like, yes, Apple. It's because the way you're positioning these phones is stupid.
Yeah.
Stop. Nobody wanted the Plus. And apparently nobody wanted the Mini aside from me. The sales numbers buoy this up. And so, rumors are flying around. What's Apple going to do next year to try and combat this? And I'm like, yeah, just drop it. Just drop it. Just don't sell it. Just stop shipping this phone. Actually, get rid of it. Drop the price of the Pro by $100. You got a winner, guys. Like, you are going to sell so many iPhone Pros.
That's not going to happen. And we'll get to that, the reason why that's not going to happen in a little bit, because Google also didn't do that.
No, that's true.
But let's start with the Pixel 9 specs. So it has the Google Tensor G4 with the Titan M2 security coprocessor, which all of these phones have that same processor. Thank you, Google, for doing that as well. Apple also, come on, same processor across all phones.
That'd be
again,
nice.
like you used to do. We know you can do it. Do it again.
Yeah.
Anyways, back to Google. This display on this phone is an Actua display, as they're calling it. It's actually, interestingly, the brightest of the displays. It goes up to 2,700 nits, which is fantastic. It's a 6.3-inch display. It is only a 1080p display, but that's also fine. That's more than enough for a phone. It has 12 gigs of RAM, which is an upgrade from the Pixel 8, which only had 8 gigs of RAM, which is extremely beneficial when it comes to the AI stuff, which we will get to in the future. But that is nice that they have it. Comes with either 128 gigs of storage, which I really wish the base was 256, but you can upgrade it to 256 if you want to. Got a 4,700 milliamp hour battery, 27 watt wired charging, and 15 watt wireless charging. Unfortunately, it is not Qi 2 wireless charging, which just boggles my mind why nobody has done that yet. I mean, literally everybody's asking for this, Android manufacturers. Come on, please bring it. It's great. Anyways, on the camera side of things, the front camera is a 10.5 megapixel sensor, and it does have autofocus, which is also nice. All of the cameras, the front-facing cameras, have really fast autofocus. Awesome. On the back, it's got a 50 megapixel wide-angle sensor and then a 40 megapixel ultra-wide sensor. So, very nice cameras. Let's see. The IP rating, it's IP68 water and dust resistant, which is fairly standard nowadays. Colors, it comes in obsidian, which is also known as black. Porcelain, also known as a white color. Wintergreen, which is actually what you would expect the color to be when you think of wintergreen. It's like a light
it's a
green
gum
color.
flavor. That's what you're, it's the same color as that gum.
Yeah. And then peony. That's an interesting name, but it's pink, basically. It's like it's a pink. As I've heard in other podcasts called Pank, it's pink. It's good. It's a good looking pink. It's definitely pink. And the price on this is starting at $799, which is $100 more than what the Pixel 8 was and the Pixel 7 before it. But I do think, as much as I hate that they're raising the prices by $100, at least on this one, it does make I think they can kind of justify it with the specs that are on this phone are very comparable to the Pro phones of last year, except even a little bit upgraded there. So it puts a little bit better perspective when you're thinking, okay, $800, and then the Pro phone starts at $999. So it's not a $300 difference beforehand, which I never made sense to me then. $200 difference does make some sense. I just wish that a $200 difference would have come by lowering the price of the Pro rather than upping the price of the regular. But it is what it is. It's 2024 and prices are going to
profit margins.
Yeah. And the last thing I wanted to mention, the unfortunate rumor we talked about a couple weeks ago, all of these phones are shipping with Android 14, not Android 15, which I still do not understand whatsoever. But yeah, that's fun.
Yep.
All right. Now on to the Pixel 9 Pro. The display on this is the Super Actua display. So there you go. Oh, actually, I was wrong about this. I thought the other display had the brightest. This one has a 3000 nit peak brightness. So I was wrong there. This one is brighter. It's also a 6.3 inch display. This is a 1280 display, so a little bit higher pixels per inch on this one. And it has 16 gigs of RAM versus 12. And it has anywhere from 128 gigs of storage up to 1 terabyte of storage on this one. A 4700 milliamp hour battery, the same 27 watt wire charging, but faster 21 watt wireless charging. On the front of the phone, the camera is a 42 megapixel sensor. So a little bit better sensor on the front of the Pro display or Pro phones. And then on the back, it's got a 50 megapixel wide angle sensor and a 48 megapixel ultra wide, which are the same sensors that are on the regular Pixel 9, which also, thank you, Google, for doing that as well. That is great. The biggest difference here is this one has a 48 megapixel telephoto sensor, which is a 5x optical sensor on this one. That's fine. If that's the main difference between the cameras, that's perfectly fine with me. I love that they're bringing the high-end cameras to the regular phone as well. This one is also IP68 rated, and the colors on these phones are Obsidian, Porcelain, Hazel, which is another green color, and then Rose Quartz, which is also another pink color. But this one is a little more faded pink, also a really good looking color. And the price on the 9 Pro is, like I said earlier, starts at $999. And then the Pro XL, just go through those specs again because they're basically all the same, except for the display is a 6.8 inch display instead of a 6.3 inch display. And it starts at $1099. So $100 more than the Pro. And yeah. So those are the new Pixel 9 phones, other than the Fold. I'm actually very pleased with these phones overall, which honestly I did not think I was going to be. I was, based on some of the rumors that I had heard, I didn't look at all of them because I did want to actually learn some things at this event. But I looked at a few, and I was not really looking forward to the Pixel phones this year. But after what I did see, I'm actually, this is the first time in a few years that Google has made me consider buying a Pixel again. I like these phones. They look really good.
Yeah.
The specs on them are decent, especially, I love the fact that the majority of the specs are across all 3 phones. The main difference is the RAM and the cameras. And even then, it's only adding 1 camera on the Pro phones, and the display is a little bit nicer on the Pro phones as well. Which, again, great. I love this. This is what all companies should do. And it is what Apple used to do. They used to have the specs across the board were relatively close, except for cameras were always a little different and the displays were a little different, but that was mainly it. And I love this.
Yep.
I love that Google is going back to that kind of thing. All right. Now, on to the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Man, I hate that name.
It's never going to get better.
No, it really
every
isn't.
time.
Every time I say it, it's going to suck even more. Anyways, so the displays on this one, the outer display is a Actua display. Both displays are Actua. The outer display is the Actua display. I hate that name too. And the inner display is a Super Actua display. They're both 2700 nit peak brightness. The outside display is 6.3 inches, which that's the same size as the Pro and the regular 9. Absolutely love it. Great. And it's a little bit bigger than it was last year, and it's the same aspect ratio. Makes it extremely usable on the outside display. Whereas the Samsung Fold, that display is super skinny and really tall and just awkward in my opinion. This one is great. And then the inside display is 8 inches, and I don't know if it's perfectly square, but it is pretty dang close to just a nice square display. And I really actually like that as well. It has 16 gigs of RAM on this one as well. So that maybe that's where the Pro comes in. The RAM. I don't know.
No. Nope. I'm not going to let them have that. I don't care. If the only difference is like the name for it to be Pro versus regular is just that it has to have 16 gigs of RAM in it, and that was your logic, Google, no. Go back to school.
Yeah.
You are
seriously.
dismissed. We're holding you back a grade. This is not satisfactory.
Yeah. It also does have a base storage model of 256 gigs, so not 128 on these ones, which, okay, that's good. It goes up to 512. You don't get a terabyte of storage option on this device, which is fine, I suppose. It has 21 watt wired charging and 7.5 watt wireless charging, so little less when it comes to charging on this one. It is a slightly smaller battery too. Unfortunately, it's a 4650 milliamp hour battery instead of the 4700 or larger on the other phones. The front-facing camera is a 10 megapixel sensor. The rear cameras, there's a 48 megapixel main sensor that's ultra wide and a 10.8 megapixel 5x telephoto lens. So it just has the two cameras on the back of the phone, which is not great when this is a Pro, Google. Anyways, this one is IPX8 rated for water resistance, not dust resistance. That's kind of standard with most of your foldable phones. Don't get it dirty, please. Don't do it. What Jerry Rig Everything
hinge.
does. Yeah.
Definitely don't do anything Jerry Rig Everything does, just as a rule of thumb. If you see him doing something to a phone, just don't.
Yeah. This one comes in two colors, obsidian and porcelain. And then the price on this one starts at $17.99. So it is the same price as last year's Fold, which is fine, still expensive, but they didn't pull a Samsung and raise it by $100. And
well, that's true.
I mean, and Samsung didn't really change much between generations. Google, in my opinion, almost justifies the name change from the Pixel Fold to the Pixel Fold 9, because this is a multi-generational leap in like how the hardware, like just the quality of the device. From everything I've heard, this like is really, really nice. Everyone is kind of more or less raving about the Fold phone here and how much nicer it is from last year's first generation Pixel Fold. And so I'm glad that they didn't raise the price. It's unfortunate that it is still so expensive, but that's kind of to be expected when it comes to what you're getting and the fact that it does fold in half. So it's fine. But yeah, that's all the phones. Some little details that were not inside those specs that I wanted to mention. On the Pro phones, not the Pro Fold, but the regular Pro. Oh, gosh, I hate that.
Why
I have
is
to
there a difference? We don't know.
Okay, listener, if I just say the Pro phones, just know that it's the 9 Pro and the 9 Pro XL, not the Pro Fold. If it's the Fold, I will say it's the Fold. Going ahead, there you go. Now you know.
Man.
Anyways, the regular Pro phones do have a vapor chamber on the phones built in to help with the processing and whatnot, keeping that chip on the cooler side, because on the Pixel 8 phones, they did have heating issues where they got pretty warm if you were doing not even that much like intensive stuff, from what I understand. So that's nice that they added that. All of these phones have satellite SOS built in, and it's not to the extent that Apple has it right now. It is just that SOS version that Apple started with. Apple now does let you just send text messages over satellite. Google is not to that point yet, but I do appreciate that they have this SOS satellite texting available. So that is good. The Pro phones, and again, I don't know if this includes the Pro Fold, but the regular Pro phones do come with 1 year of Gemini Advanced and 2 terabytes of Google Cloud storage. So if you don't plan on paying for that in the future, I would just say don't use it, especially the storage. because you don't want to have even a couple hundred gigs worth of storage and then all of a sudden it's just gone and you don't want to pay for it. That would suck.
Yep.
I mean, maybe you could play around with the Gemini advanced stuff, but whatever. It's Gemini. The availability on these phones is interesting, to say the least. So the Pixel 9 and the Pro XL, so the regular Pixel 9 and the 9 Pro XL will be available to purchase online and in-store on August 22nd. And then the Pixel 9 Pro, the smaller one, and the Fold will be available on September 4th. Why there's a difference in there, I don't know. I mean, you can pre-order all of the phones right now, but those are the dates when they're in store and will ship, or, well, when you should get them if you order them online. So, that's interesting.
Weird.
All right, let's move on to some other things that they talked about. Now, we all know that when it comes to Pixel phones, it's not generally the hardware that most people care about, although the hardware on these phones, I will say again, is great. I do love the hardware. But the main thing with Pixel phones has always been the software. Google just does really, really good when it comes to utilizing what hardware they have and the software that they apply to it. I mean, it's the whole Apple effect. When you build the hardware and you build the software, things just work better. It's great. So some of the stuff they talked about was there's a new weather app built in to Android on these Pixel phones. And I mean, it looks very similar to the Apple weather app. It's got a lot of the same tiles, like the weather report at the top. Like, I don't hate it. It's fine. The Apple weather app is pretty good for the most part. There are some things that you may want extra that aren't going to be there, but for a stock weather app, it's more than enough for most people. The big thing that they talked about with this new weather app is at the very top, it's got an AI weather report. So it actually does look relatively useful, kind of. I mean, you can also just look at the weather right below it and summarize the same thing on your own.
Yeah.
But it's there if you want to use it.
You think they'll let you turn off the AI stuff? Like, hey, don't let me.
No.
Like,
that's why you're buying the phone. Is for the AI stuff, Wes. Don't you know?
See, that's my only issue. Like, I'm like looking at this and I'm like, this sounds great. But the thing I'm really worried about is every picture I see here and everything I see on here is like, guess what? What you do could be better with AI. And I'm just like, don't force me into this. I don't want to do that.
I mean, you can turn the AI off. It's just you have to turn the phone off.
Yeah. I just don't want to spend, what is it, $1,000 on that Pro XL to turn it off all day.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean,
yep.
The majority of the stuff that I'm going to talk about now with AI stuff that's all on-device AI stuff, I do think can and will be beneficial to a lot of people. Like, when it comes to the Gemini search and all that stuff, most of it is, I don't necessarily think it's going to be that big of a deal. But it's the other stuff that, like, I'm gonna start talking about that Google has been doing for a while. They just didn't necessarily call it AI, or it wasn't as pronounced as AI before. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot of stuff that Google has been doing.
We used to call this stuff the
machine
Google
learning.
Assistant.
Google Assistant.
And it was powered by machine learning algorithms and stuff like that. Those are the buzzwords that we used in yesteryear. And now we use AI to describe all the same functionality, even though nothing has fundamentally really changed, because that's just what's in the cultural zeitgeist right now, to the point where you can't write science fiction and call something an AI in the science fiction anymore, because people are going to be like, what? But that's like, it's not realistic at all, because we have AI now and it's nowhere near that smart. And it's like,
we know.
It's because what we have right now isn't actually AI. Anyways.
Yeah. All right, on to some other features that they talked about. So this one I actually kind of really liked. It's a new feature called Call Notes. This is kind of the adding on to the call screen feature that they've had in the past, which was absolutely one of my favorite features on the Pixel phone. Call screening was great. I do like it. The similar version that Apple's done on the iPhone. I love it. It's fantastic. But call notes, what it is it will summarize the conversation that you had with the person on the phone. And it will give you a written out transcription of the phone. And again, summarize what's there. So give you some basic notes of what you've been doing. The only not the downside, the good thing here, but the problem here is that you have to enable call notes on the phone call, and it does tell the other person that it is recording the call, which, again, that's good. I'm glad that it does tell the other person that it's recording the call. But, I mean, the main thing that you're going to want to use this for is like a business call, like a meeting over the phone or something like that, maybe an interview, maybe calling like customer service somewhere so you can record that and have that as a backup for that conversation, which please just do that in general. That's always a good thing to do, just in case they try to say that they didn't do, that you said you weren't. I don't know, different things. But it is nice, and it is all done on device. It does not go to the cloud. I do like that. Pretty much all the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here when it comes with their AI stuff is all on device. Again, really enjoy that. And that's where the extra RAM on the base model comes in handy, because you can do all this stuff on the Pixel 9, not just on the Pro phones, which is good. The next one is something that should just be built into the Photos app, but it's its own separate app. It's called Pixel Screenshots. I don't know why this has to be a separate app. I kind of understand why they did that, but at the same time, it's like you could just make a folder inside of Google Photos that does all this same stuff. Anyways, let's talk about what it does.
I know why. It's because it was developed by a completely different team at Google than the people who do the Photos app. It's completely separate team.
Yeah.
It's totally unrelated to each other. And one of them was using Hangouts and the other one was using Meet. And so they couldn't actually talk to each other, and there was no collaboration. And so it's just a separate app. That's why.
Yes. That is,
you got it.
Yes. 100% true on that one. So what this does, every time you take a screenshot now, and it also, they did say this will kind of do this, a lot of the same functionality to previously saved screenshots. You do have to add, I think you have to add those older screenshots into the Screenshots app, but it will do a lot of the same stuff, more or less, that the new features will have. But like the biggest thing to me that I actually kind of liked was if you take a screenshot on a web page of anything, really, it'll save that, and then you can search inside of the Screenshots app. Man, that's a mouthful. You can search inside of this app for a certain screenshot. So say you took a picture or a screenshot of like a shoe purchase that you potentially want to make. You could just search for shoes and it'll pull up all the screenshots associated with that. And the really cool thing that I actually really like about this new feature is if you do take a screenshot of something, like say it's a website like this, it will save the URL associated with that screenshot to the metadata in the screenshot. So you click on the screenshot, it will take you to that website and to that page where the screenshot was taken. It'll also do this with other apps as well. I really like that. So you don't have to just remember, okay, where was this at? Or make sure your screenshot includes the URL at the top or something like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
That is really handy. And then also, like, for me, like, I don't take a ton of screenshots. So initially when I saw this, like, this is not going to be useful at all for me. But I saw that feature. I'm like, I oftentimes will just open up a tab inside of Chrome and just leave it open. So I've got so many freaking tabs open in Chrome on my phone, just so when I can go back to that tab again, it's there. Whereas I could just take a screenshot, close out the tab, and then go back to it that way. I really liked that. But again, I do think this is something that should just be baked into Google Photos and not necessarily its own app.
I mean, it's basically like a less creepy, more user-friendly and privacy-friendly version of the Windows 11 Copilot Plus feature that was going to be spying on everything you did 100% of the time.
Yes.
So
That is a good description.
It's weird to say, but I think that Google was the more privacy focused one in this particular exchange, and the more security conscious one. And what? That's backwards.
I mean, to be fair, Google has been a lot more privacy focused the last 2 or 3 years, which I applaud them for.
Yes.
And like I mentioned before, this is all done on device as well. So again, good on Google. And yes, I do agree. This is like a user responsible way of doing what Microsoft wanted to do, because you're the one that has to take the screenshot and save the information.
Trigger it.
Yes.
It's on you.
It's not just every 5
it's
seconds
not
happening.
Everything.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. All right. The next one is called Pixel Studio, aptly named, copying Apple and everyone else that also has a on-device image generator is what this is, basically. And it's fine. I mean, it's what it is. It's an on-device image generator. The demo they showed worked fine. It worked actually pretty well. It gave multiple versions of the image that they were asking for. And actually what I thought was interesting is like the example that they showed was basically creating an invitation to a party, which I would imagine that Canva might have something to say about this. I mean, you can do more on Canva when it comes to details and stuff like that, but when it comes to speed, this is definitely going to be faster right now, and it's on your phone and it's all done on device. That's a lot of people are going to start using stuff like this, and I actually don't hate it. I'm perfectly fine with it. You can definitely tell that it's AI generated. It's not trying to be lifelike, which is, again, like what Apple did. They made it on purpose, not make it so it doesn't look real, more or less, you know? And I'm fine with that. Image generation kind of should be that way for a while, forever, really, not just for a while.
Yes.
But I like that. Then they moved on to some camera features, which, of course, Google is definitely going to talk about the camera. That's kind of been their big thing. Like, that's the main selling point to Pixel phones is the camera. They added HDR to panorama photos and also night sight to panorama photos, which that's really cool. I really like that. So if you want to take a panoramic picture, it's nighttime, it will just basically make it a lot more pleasant to look at, more or less. The most interesting feature that they added to the camera is a new feature called Add Me. And this is not something that you have to go in and turn on in settings, or like it's not inside of Google Photos. This is like you scroll through the different options inside the camera. There's an Add Me section there. And the way this works is, say you're out and about on a hike or something like that, and you want to take a picture of you and the people that you're with, but there just doesn't happen to be anybody else around you to take the photo of everyone, and you don't have a tripod to set it up or different things like that. The way that this works is you take a picture of the main group, leave a little bit of a space on the side where you might stand. You take the picture inside the Add Me portion of the camera, and then somebody else comes, grabs the phone from you. It overlays the picture that you'd already taken. You go and stand. The person taking the picture will tell you more or less where you should stand to fit in, takes another picture, and then it stitches those two together, and it, as it says in the name, adds you to the photo with everyone there. I actually really kind of like this feature. There have been times where this would be really beneficial, and it's like, usually when I'm in this scenario, I end up taking like a selfie type picture and like my arms outstretched as far as it can possibly go. And I'm hoping that I can still get everyone in the picture. And you can tell you're not getting the background of what you really want to get in the picture with everyone else. So I kind of like this feature.
Yeah. It's Photoshop in a box.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing you could basically do with Photoshop at the click of a button. Before you just take two pictures. You usually wanted to lock the camera onto a tripod in order to do this, but you just take a picture, take another picture, and then you could just merge them easy peasy. And yeah, like this is doing that on your phone in real time without you having to have any skill or talent whatsoever. Okay. Yeah. Photoshop in a box. That's pretty, I mean, it's not surprising to me. This is the direction that photo editing has been marching in for quite some time as the algorithms for this kind of photo analysis have improved. So yeah, it's good. Good.
Yeah. The next cool feature I thought that they added to the fold phones is a feature called Made You Look. And this is for the people that have smaller children that may have a tendency to not look at the camera when you're trying to take a picture. But the way this works is if you open up the fold and use the main cameras on the back of the phone and use the big screen as your viewfinder, it'll use that outside display and it'll show a very cutesy cartoon type image to try and get your child's attention to look at the camera, or at least look at the phone. And I actually love this feature. It is so brilliant.
I'll bet that works real well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like, I really
Honestly,
think it's going to work great.
They ought to put this on the flip phones.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, the Motorola ones that where the screen is like around the lenses.
Yeah.
That would be sick, because then they would be looking right at the lens.
Yeah.
You know, there would be no offset at all.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I would imagine that both Motorola and Samsung would see this, be like, oh, we need to add that immediately.
Yeah.
Or there's a developer
sure
out there that's like,
stolen.
we're going to make an app that does this on other folding phones because that's smart. And another cool little detail that they added with this is they're partnering with Disney, and they're going to be adding Joy from Inside Out is one of the screens that you can put on there. They did say they're going to be adding other characters in the future, but Joy is the first one that they're putting on the fold phone when it comes out. So that was a really cool feature. And other features coming to the Pro camera, the Fold camera, which another reason they may be trying to justify the Pro Fold name is you now have Pro controls on in the camera app on the folding phone. So again, doesn't justify the name, but it's another reason Google's going to try to give you for justifying that name.
It's a bad reason, Google. It's dumb.
Yeah,
it's a dumb reason, especially since these Pro controls are all just software controls that exist for the cameras on the regular 9. You just haven't exposed them.
Yep.
Nothing is different. They exist, and I can download a third-party app that will let me use them. They're just not exposed in the camera UI? No.
Yeah. All right. They did add a few new features to the Magic Editor inside of Google Photos. The example that they gave was basically like a way to auto frame a picture. So like, I thought this was a really bad example, honestly. The picture that they showed was a kid sitting on a grass field, and it was kind of angled. It actually looked really good, I thought. But he was like, oh, if I just had a little extra time, I could have straightened that photo. It's like, no, you purposely did this just for this. Anyways. But he made it so it straightened out the picture, and it added a little bit of stuff around, kind of like what they did showcase it at Google I/O this year, where it uses image generation to add stuff to the photo on the corners where it wouldn't have been. And it looked fine. And then he was like, let's do a little bit more. So he added some wildflowers to the grass field. And he scrolled through it, gave a few different options. And then he picked one, and it looked good. And then this was the absolute, like, despite the fact that the first live demo they gave didn't work, this one was my favorite of the live demos of what could go wrong in a live demo. Even though it worked, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So he wanted to add a hot air balloon to the background in the sky behind this person in the photo. So he zoomed in, circled a section of the sky, and said, add a hot air balloon. And like I said, it gives you multiple options that you can scroll through to choose from. And the first one was really good, looked great. Scrolled to the second one. It was absolutely awful. Did not resemble a balloon in any way, shape, or form. Looked more like a potato, honestly. And he even mentioned, he's like, oh, that doesn't look all that great, and swiped over. Went to the third one. It was okay. Not nearly as good as the first one. He should have, and probably wanted to, scroll back to the first one, but didn't want to scroll back past the second one because of how bad it absolutely looked. So we picked the third one and was like, that's fine. It was amazing.
Man.
Listener, if you haven't watched it, go and just look up that part of the keynote because it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Loved it. But I do like some of this stuff that's in Magic Editor. It's funny because, like, if you listen to Marquez Brownlee, he's kind of gone over this last couple of years. He's like, what is a photo anymore? And I agree because of stuff like this. You can completely change the photo to be something that it was not when you took it, which, okay, I don't love that. But at the same time, it's like, this isn't going to be a photo most of the time that you're going to be sharing online. You're going to be doing this, most users anyway, to be like, hey, look what I can do on my phone. And then you probably won't do it again. Or if you do, it'll be like a year or two down the road, be like, oh, check out what I can do on my phone to somebody else that you didn't already show. So I'm fine with it.
And I feel like this is them trying to, again, Photoshop in a box.
Mm-hmm.
This is them trying to go to users and say, like, hey, you've seen these really cool, heavily edited photos on Instagram or something from, you know, a photographer who specializes in, I don't know, video game photography or something like that. And they take these portraits and stick a person into a fantasy world or a video game world or something like that. It's a whole genre of photography right now. And they're basically trying to say, like, hey, you can do this on your phone. You don't need to pay an expensive photographer for it or anything like that. Listener, as a word of advice, doesn't matter how good these features get, just pay the expensive photographer because you're not actually paying them for their ability to take a photo and Photoshop the photo. Photoshop is a tool. Photoshop, yeah, it's expensive. And yeah, you can replace this with less expensive tools in the app, like the photo app on your phone. Sure. But it's still just a tool. What you're actually paying them for is their artistry, which they have as a result of many hours of practice and possibly innate skill, but more likely than not, just a lot of practice. You don't have that. like, no offense. And if it's the kind of thing where you want to become that photographer and this is the tool you start with, great. That's fantastic. That's absolutely awesome. And with many, many hours of practice, you will gain the artistry needed. You'll probably upgrade to more powerful tools later on as well. And that's the progression. It makes sense. It works. But just generally speaking, listener, you are not going to, get this photo feature to put you into a, you're not going to be able to dress up in your Star Wars cosplay and have this thing put you onto the hangar deck of the Death Star as effectively as just paying a photographer to do that for you. Yeah. I promise it will not work that well.
Honestly, you could probably find a cheap photographer on Fiverr to do it for $5 to $10, and it would still look better than what you're going to get out of this image generator.
Yeah, that's true. And honestly, go on to Fiverr and spend $50, and you could probably get way better than what the image generator is going to give you. So, yeah, it is, for the most part, a toy. I can see it being, like I said, the first tool that somebody who is interested in becoming a fantasy portrait photographer might use to get going on that path, but it's not the end tool. This is a starting point. They will upgrade to better tools as they gain skill. And it's, so I don't know. I don't have a problem with it, but I do think that you're right, Landon. It's a toy. It's a toy.
Yeah. And that is all of the phone stuff and the software going along with the phones. I do, like I said, I was actually pretty impressed with the majority of the stuff that they showcased here. I am slightly tempted by these phones. I am still going to wait to see what Apple does. And I still may not even end up buying a new phone this year, as strange as that is to me. I mean, it boggles my mind. I already have had a phone, the longest I've ever had one singular phone in my life, at 3 years. So that in and of itself is impressive. So the fact that I still may go another year without a phone is shocking to me. Anyways, I also don't want to spend $1,000 on a phone, but it might happen. Let's move on to other hardware that was announced. So they announced a new Pixel Watch 3, and for the first time, they finally gave us 2 different sizes of watch here, which thank you, Google, for doing this. Everyone's been asking for it. Some people, unfortunately, didn't get what they wanted. They were hoping for a slightly smaller version, but actually we still have the regular 41 millimeter that is the small version and a bigger 45 millimeter version. And I'm okay with that because I actually would prefer the bigger 45 millimeter over the 41, but I do feel somewhat bad for those that have smaller wrists that look for a smaller watch because you can't really find a smaller smartwatch, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least not a decent one. Some of the specs on these watches, they come with the Qualcomm Snapdragon W5 processor, which, listener, you may know that processor because it's also in the Pixel Watch 2, which is fine. I mean, that's Qualcomm's fault for not giving us a new processor yet for watches. But that being said, this one is perfectly fine. It is still a good processor for a smartwatch. It's got 2 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage. The battery on the 41 millimeter is a 306 milliamp hour battery. And on the 45, it's got a 420 milliamp hour battery. So a little bit bigger because bigger, more space. Launches with Wear OS 5. They do have heart rate, like basically all the main sensors you're going to get from any watch. The heart rate sensor, SpO2, ECG, and skin temperature sensor and stuff like that. And they are also IP68 rated for water and dust resistance. I actually like a lot of the features on these new watches. The displays on these watches are a little bit brighter than previous. They go up to 2,000 nits, and both watches go down to 1 nit, similar to the Apple Watch Ultra. I don't think that's on the regular Apple Watch.
No, I don't believe it is.
Yeah, I think it's just on
the Ultra.
On the Ultra, which Google, good job on bringing it to both your regular. I mean, they don't have another watch, but I like that it's on just their regular watches. There's some of the new features on there with these new watches is you can now live stream your Nest cameras to your watch. So if you want to check your camera, you don't have to pull your phone out. You can just look at your watch, which, okay, I guess if you want to do that. It's very not a large display to do that with, but you know.
Oh, that's a gray dot. I see a gray dot. Yeah. It's doing something.
Pretty much. I thought this was a feature before, but apparently not. You can now control the phone camera or the Pixel phone camera from the watch. So if you do set it up somewhere to take a picture, you can toggle that with the watch, which I actually really like. I've used that on my watch before. Great feature. You can, this one I don't understand at all, but you can use your watch as a TV remote for Google TV. Why?
It's very small.
I mean, the remote is already relatively small, but it's still bigger than a watch.
Maybe to pause it real fast. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Turn
you
up
can
the
pause.
volume.
Maybe you can swipe to go forward and backward. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It boggles my mind why you would want to use your watch as a television remote. But Google apparently thinks that's something people want.
You say that, but back in the day of the Casio calculator watches, you could totally get those with IR TV remote blasters in them.
I mean, that is true, but they also had like 20 buttons on the watch that actually did stuff.
Yeah, they were tiny buttons, though. You couldn't hit them with anything other than like the tip of a ballpoint pen.
Yeah. It's like the calculator watch that, it's really small. Oh.
I wonder if it's, I don't know, I'm looking at this, some of the stuff it says media controls in exercise. So maybe it's like while you're exercising on something and you don't have your phone near you, like, boop, I don't know.
Well,
it's what it says here. I don't.
That's fairly typical when it comes to that's just media in general. Like you can pause music or stuff like that if you're exercising and whatnot. That's fairly normal, I think. But they did specifically mention the TV remote in the keynote.
It does say that under it here.
So, I haven't actually seen this in use. I'm sure people will test that out when it comes out. But, yeah, interesting. A lot of the other features, they're more or less bringing this up to par with other smartwatches when it comes to the fitness stuff. There are still things that Samsung's watch and Apple's watches do that can, like, they can do, those watches can do more on the fitness side of things just because they've been around for longer. But Google is bringing the Fitbit partnership that they've got here is actually paying off now. Like, there's way more things you can do on this watch than you could on the previous generation watches. And I really like that. Like, most of this part of the keynote was about fitness stuff on the watch, which, I mean, most people that buy smartwatches are looking for it for that purpose. So I'm glad that they're bringing more of this stuff to the watch. It is, like I said, bringing it more on par with those other watches that you can buy, which, again, makes it easier for me to want to switch back to a Pixel phone, because I would also have to switch watches because the Apple Watch doesn't work on Android Apple. For me, it would be a little harder in that sense because I still, the look of the Pixel Watch is not my favorite. It's fine. It's just not my personal style. But the features that are coming to the Pixel Watch, I really like, at least on the fitness side of things. One thing that they did mention that is new on these watches that I don't think is, I'm pretty sure it's not on any other watch, but it's called loss of pulse detection. What this does is when your pulse slows down enough and you don't respond to anything that your watch is doing, it will automatically call emergency services to come to you and help with whatever's going on, obviously. I really like that. The downside currently is that is coming in September, so it's not at launch right away, and it's only coming to the EU and the UK initially, which, I mean, makes some sense. They got to get regulatory issues going with this, but it's still a really nice feature. It makes me think a lot like with the fall detection on the Apple Watch. Just little things like this are really nice to have for certain people.
I suspect we're going to have a lot of news stories after this thing launches that are going to be very similar to when Apple introduced crash detection on the iPhone 14 and the Apple Watch of that year, where, people were going skiing or stuff like that, and they'd have, 911 calls happening because of that.
Yeah.
And this is going to be like, somebody's going to get a new watch. They're not going to be aware of the feature. They're going to be the type of person who, they exist, doesn't wear watches very tightly on their wrist. And so they'll shift into a position where it loses contact with their wrist in such a way that it can no longer see their pulse, and it's going to dial 911 I guess 999 in the UK. Isn't that what their emergency services number is? Anyways, it's going to dial emergency services, and we're going to see a few news stories where it's all like, this person was not actually injured or in any danger whatsoever, but their watch thought they were and called the police or an ambulance or something. And that'll be fine, actually, because they, have single payer healthcare there, and ambulances don't actually cost any money and stuff like that. So it's not going to make people bankrupt the way that it would here in the US. Maybe that's why Google isn't launching it here.
They want to get all the bugs worked out in the UK.
Yeah,
first.
they want to get the bugs worked out in places with socialized healthcare before they bring it to the US and accidentally make somebody bankrupt because their watch thought they were dead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Google has tested this stuff, but that being said, you're always going to find more bugs when you bring it to the masses. And
yes.
And like Caleb said, Apple had this exact issue when they announced car crash detection. It was roller coasters, it was skiing, it was things like that had similar noises associated with the crash and sudden stops associated with the crash that would have these issues pop up. I would hope that the people that are wearing these devices do still get that alert saying, "Hey, did this happen?"
Yes.
And they can cancel it before it calls. I don't know what the time frame is, like the wait time there, but again, hopefully they will at least notice the alert and stop it. But again, people are going to miss that. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Like, what if you're the type of person who wears this thing for sleep tracking and you're fast asleep and the alert goes off and you're a deep sleeper? You don't quite wake up for it. And then the next thing you know, there's a paramedic banging on your front door.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're not banging you on the front door. They're going through because they think you're dead.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Lose a lot of front doors that way.
Yeah. But I do like that they're adding something like this. It is nice to have these quality of life features. Safety features are always beneficial when it comes to these smartwatches. And like I said with the phones, this is the first Pixel Watch that's actually impressed me with a lot of the new features that are coming to it. And it's the first one that I've actually considered maybe buying. But again, we'll see what happens. It probably won't happen, but you never know. It could happen.
I know I'll probably be looking into getting it. I have the original Pixel Watch.
That's true. This would be a massive upgrade for you.
Yeah,
like,
it is.
I mean, honestly, the Pixel Watch 1 to the 2, it wasn't a huge upgrade, but it was a big enough upgrade when it came to fitness features because it was the Pixel Watch 2 that finally had that Fitbit integration.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and this is just even more so. So going from a Pixel Watch 1 to this one actually makes a lot of sense. So, listener, if that is you, like Wes, this is something to definitely consider when you're looking at a new smartwatch. The prices on these watches may be the thing that keeps you from buying one, but the 41 millimeter watch is $349, and the 45 millimeter watch is $399. So it is on par with Samsung and Apple when it comes to smartwatches. They are kind of pricey, but it is what it is. All right, moving on to the last bit of hardware that they talked about at this event, the Pixel Buds Pro 2. These are new Pixel Buds. I mean, that kind of,
Yep.
They are a relatively significant upgrade from the first generation Pixel Buds Pro. I don't know if they're enough to really justify buying these ones if you already have the first generation one, but they are definitely better. So these ones actually have not an Apple chip, despite the name. It's the Tensor A1. So yes, it's not an Apple A series chip. It's a Tensor A series chip. I don't know why they did that, but they did. But it is the first Google-made processor in some earbuds. So we'll have to see how that goes. They are claiming you can get up to 8 hours of battery with active noise cancellation turned on, which is impressive because there's not very many earbuds out there that can do that, especially with how small these are. Like these, they actually made them a little bit smaller overall. So the fact that they have more and better battery life is impressive. That probably has more to do with the processor that's inside of them than anything else. But I like that. They also have this new little fin on the one side that so you can put it in your ear, and then they were saying if you want to just wear them regularly, you just put them in like normal and you're fine. But if you're starting to work out or doing something a little more with a little more movement, you can twist it a little bit in your ear and it kind of locks into place a little more. That fin kind of just holds it a little more securely inside your ear.
Just so you know, that'll probably be also good with eating. From experience, you have those in and you start eating something, and all of a sudden the little earbuds, the original ones, will go boop, pop right out.
I think that says a little more about you than the earbuds. How are you?
No, that's what I'm saying. I have the first version of these, and they're great. But if you go out and you're working out or you do stuff shoveling snow, yeah, they'll pop right out. Just so that's this little fins. Actually, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
So maybe that's the reason to upgrade on these watches or earbuds.
Yeah,
interesting. Didn't think that would be the selling point, but all right, that is the selling point. The other massively important feature that is coming to these earbuds is Gemini. Wait, no, people aren't. Yeah, whatever. Not that that's really any different. It's basically just accessing the assistant on your phone. From what I understand, it's not Gemini built into the earbuds because they don't have Wi-Fi on them. So it's just accessing Gemini through your phone, which you can do that on any other earbud at the moment. I don't know. But they had to make a big deal about it because it's Gemini. It's the new thing. I don't know. It's stupid.
It's a label.
So just for the record, I know why they did the A1 chip for them. Like, they're calling it A because of audio, presumably. But the reason they can get away with that is that Apple didn't actually start numbering until the A4.
Oh.
The
That
first
makes sense,
Apple-designed SoC that debuted in the first iPad and then was later in the iPhone 4 was called the A4, not the A1. So they started with 4. So Google has got A1 through 3 that they can use completely without interfering with Apple's trademarks or anything like that. And I will bet you money that that's as far as they thought. They thought to themselves, yeah, we might get through 3 iterations of this chip before we cancel this product because we're Google. That's what we do.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate truth. The price on these earbuds are $229, which I believe is very similar, if not the same price as what the original Pixel Buds Pro were. And they will start shipping on September 26th. So you have to wait a little while for these ones. But there you go. That is the the Made by Google event for August of 2024. Lots of new hardware, lots of new AI stuff, lots of stuff. Most of it good, some of it why, but most of it I actually, like I said, I was actually quite impressed with the majority of the stuff talked about at this keynote. I really liked it. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing some reviews on all the phones, the watches, and the earbuds. Like, normally I don't really care about new earbuds, but I do genuinely want to hear about what these new earbuds have to offer, mostly when it comes to battery life, because that's the main selling point to me is battery life. If I can get more battery life out of the same thing, great. So I'm very interested in all of this stuff that's coming from Google. So there you go. Made by Google. That's a lot of stuff.
It is. Yes.
And now I will be quiet for a moment.
Now it's time for Caleb. Let's see.
Yay!
Some Apple news. Some interesting Apple news. Epic Game Store launches on iPhone in the EU.
Yeah. Well, that's the news. There you go. No, this one is for you, Wes, because you are famously a person who plays a bunch of Fortnite and has an
Europe.
iPhone
Yep.
and lives in Europe.
Yep. This is my jam.
Hey, now, to be fair, Wes actually can download the Epic Game Store on Android in the US.
That is true.
True.
Now, listener, you may be wondering why I'm reporting on this news at all. And it's a good question. I don't know why I'm doing it either. No, so, the European Union, their Digital Markets Act, got the S in the wrong place there. That sucker has had some interesting effects. And the reason I bring this up is because I'm going to continue to cover the way that things are implemented surrounding Apple's changes to be in compliance with the DMA, because it's so interesting just how broken Apple's compliance with the DMA is.
Yeah.
So the Epic Game Store has been launched as an external app marketplace on Apple's, ecosystem, which means that the marketplace itself has to be vetted by Apple. And all of the apps that go through the marketplace also have to be vetted by Apple, like they're in the App Store itself. I don't know. The whole thing is just absolutely stupid. The only saving grace to this, to the Epic Game Store being a thing, is that they obviously don't have to comply with the fact that Apple banned all of their games. So Fall Guys and Fortnite and all the Epic original games that you can get on phones on Android are now available on iPhones in the EU. So there is that. And you don't have to, Epic isn't going to have to pay Apple a 30% fee for every in-app purchase made in those games, which is why Epic has done this. Epic has to pay a core technology fee for every download that they get and stuff like that, but apparently they've done the math and it works out to be, cost effective to do it this way. So that's why this exists. It is just still really weird to me that stuff like this does exist, and I don't know how this could possibly actually be profitable for Epic in the long run in a big way. It almost feels like this exists because Tim Sweeney just still has a massive hate boner for Tim Cook and Apple as a whole, and he is gonna stick it to them wherever possible.
Yeah.
It continues. It continues. If you live in Europe and you're just really dying to play Fortnite on an iPhone, you can do it this way, I guess. But also, if you live in Europe, you're going to have to let me know what the app experience on iPhones is like here in another year or two, because the way that Apple has implemented these changes, I am expecting it to be very odd.
Yeah.
In about that time. So we'll see. I'm keeping an eye on it.
We'll leave it at that.
I do have one thing that I wanted to mention that, at least where I've read, is that there actually are only 3 games on this store currently.
Yes.
And that's my favorite part, is that there's only 3 games. So it's Fortnite, a mobile version of Fall Guys, and Rocket League Sideswipe, which is basically a mobile interpretation of Rocket League, which, that's fine. It's a very popular game. I mean, these are probably the most popular games that anybody's actually going to want, but it's still funny that they went through all this problem to put 3 games on these phones.
Well, it is the games owned by Epic, right?
Yeah.
These are the games owned and developed by Epic, and that they have mobile versions of. And yes, they're putting them onto iPhone. And the big question in everybody's head is, can Epic possibly put other games on here? Because if they do, the developers of those games are not going to get the same benefits as Epic does as the owner of the platform.
Yeah.
They are going to have to, if they want to make money off of them, charge people money inside of the Epic Game Store in order to, people have to buy the games. And if they have to buy the games, then they're going to have to pay Apple's various fees. And Apple's various fees, as they're currently laid out, add up to more than the 30% cut that they would be taking if the app was directly in the App Store.
Yeah.
So I don't know how popular paid games are going to be in this, especially since on top of that, I assume they would have to pay Epic's 12% fee. On top of all the fees they would be paying for Apple, they would have to pay Epic a fee. And it's like, nah, this is just Epic putting their own games on Apple devices. I don't see any reason for any other game to go this route.
I kind of wonder if this is what Microsoft was waiting for their game store to be launched. What was it, July, they said? July. I wonder if there's something they were waiting for, something like this, so then they'll start doing the same thing with all their plethora of games too. I think they'll be successful with it over there.
Yeah. I think they've got a lot more stuff that they could put into it, and I feel like that might be meaningful for them. But for Epic, the whole thing is very strange. This whole situation is just weird, and I'm really interested to see how it plays out. So that's why I bring it up, listener.
Fair.
I'm just interested we're keeping you updated. This whole thing is bizarre, and I want to see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. All right. Well, more on that later.
Probably, yeah.
Let's get into some general tech news here. We got the Ryzen 9000 series launched. Continues with the Ryzen 9. I'm going to say this okay. The Ryzen 9 9900X and the 9950X. And the general sentiment remains static.
Yeah. No, you were supposed to do the sound effect. The general sentiment remains.
Oh, yeah. My bad.
That is the whole. So last week, listener, we talked about how Ryzen 9000, we had the 9600X and the 9700X, and it was kind of just a big old pile of meh. And turns out I said quite optimistically at the end of that episode that just wait. We're going to wait for the 9900X and the 9950X. These are the high-powered, high-performance chips. This is going to where the 9000 series will make more sense. No, as it happens, for general consumers, just don't. The Ryzen 9000 series is kind of DOA. For general consumers, actually, probably what you should do is go get yourself a used AM4 motherboard and then buy like a 5500X 3D or a 5700X 3D or something like that, because AMD keeps releasing processors for the AM4 platform, like new ones that are, I guess, on an older architecture, but there's the X3D chips, they just punch so far above their weight for general consumer use cases, like gaming especially. That's not to say that these new chips, the Ryzen 9000 series, is a giant bust from AMD. They do make a lot of sense and are very high-performing CPUs in production workflows and, workstation use cases, right? So, especially, weirdly, if you're running Linux, in fact, there appears to be something to do with Windows 10, Windows 11, that, especially on the high core count chips like the 9950X that uses two CCDs, two little dies that each have 8 cores on them. Something about the Windows scheduler trying to get those two CCDs to play nice together is kind of broken, and so you're not seeing nearly the performance you should get out of them in Windows normally. Now, if you run the admin version of Windows that opens your entire computer up for all changes to be made at like the kernel level, and you should never just run your computer in admin mode constantly, because that becomes kind of a security nightmare for anybody who happens to walk past your computer or be on the same network as your computer. So just don't do that. But if you did, you'd actually be getting like a 16% improvement in the performance of something like the 9900X. So that's wild, and hopefully Windows can fix that at some point. But if you have a workstation, you're doing workstation tasks on Linux, so like protein folding or any kind of CAD work and stuff like that, then actually, yeah, these are 16 to 20% faster than the previous generation of Ryzen processors, and they're like almost double the efficiency of the previous generation of Ryzen processors, and both of those things taken together make them quite good for those use cases. If you want to, as a normal consumer, buy this to do normal consumer things and play video games or whatever, maybe don't. Just don't. That's where we're at right here. A lot of the reviews that you're going to see for these things are focused on what normal consumers would do, including video games, and all those reviewers are pretty disappointed with the performance of these things and would, just buy older Ryzen processors. They're all very, very good. And in fact, yes, the 5500X 3D for the AM4 platform is rumored to be launching here soon, or it just launched, or I can't remember, but it's essentially just a non-Micro Center exclusive version of the 5600X 3D. Slightly lower peak clock speed, I think, is the only difference. So giant amounts of 3D cache on a processor that boosts up to 4 gigahertz and runs on motherboards that are like, there's literally bajillions of them on the used market right now because that platform existed for so long. So if you can find one of these things, you can get a BIOS update to support 5th gen Ryzen, and you can get yourself a 5500X 3D for like, I don't know, $200, that maybe even less than that. That's your gaming value, like bang for your buck right now from AMD, and it's going to be more stable than Intel. It's going to be more cost effective than buying new AMD stuff, and that's kind of the route. That's where we're at. So Ryzen 9000, unless you are working in like a lab of some kind, maybe just pass.
Wow, that is static right there. Oh,
yep.
All right, let's go ahead and move on. Is it Venu Sports or is it Venu? Venu Sports dead on arrival.
So, listener, a few weeks ago, we mentioned how Venu Sports had announced all of their content that was going to be available and a price. They did not mention a date that they were going to be launching. And I remember that we had kind of come to the conclusion that if they don't launch before, or at least right at the beginning of football season, it's not going to be a great, it's like people aren't going to pick up on it as quickly as they probably would have if it does launch right at the beginning of football season. But a new issue has popped up for Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery, the people behind Venu Sports. So this was initially announced back in February, and we'd mentioned that before. And Fubo TV, shortly thereafter, did file an injunction, or, they filed some issues with the court saying, hey, this is a potential monopolistic type scenario going on here because these are massive companies that have all the sports mostly, and they are controlling everything that goes into it. That's, a fair point to make. And apparently a U.S. district judge saw it the same way. So the other day, the judge ruled that they are going to be they're granting that preliminary injunction, and that is going to potentially delay the launch of Venu Sports for Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers. And
Beautiful.
I find it absolutely hilarious because it's kind of expected that this happened, honestly. And on Twitter, Fubo TV's CEO, David Gandler, he said, today's ruling is a monumental victory for Fubo, the media industry, and the American consumer. We are fully committed to delivering the best sports streaming experience free from unfair competition by media giants. And trust us, we're just getting started. So that last bit, what that means, not entirely sure yet. But I kind of agree with him that we need to be able to have better access to this type of stuff and not just, these companies combining together to just rule everything. So
yeah,
I don't hate that this happened.
One of the biggest things that we all complained about in the heyday of the peak satellite cable experience, before cord cutting became a buzzword, was the monopolistic behavior of the providers.
Mm-hmm.
It was real bad, and cord cutting was a way to escape that. And as we move back toward basically just having cable subscriptions again, we're seeing a lot of monopolistic behavior. So,
yeah.
Not surprising to anybody, frankly.
Yeah. But I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on that. So if you happen to be looking forward to using this Venu Sports app to watch different sports, you are going to have to wait probably a little bit longer, if indefinitely, because who knows if this will even happen now, because depending on what happens in court, it could just not launch. So we will wait and see.
Fair. Good on that. All right. Got one little bit of news here. Well, it's kind of, I don't know, I assume a lot of people might know this, but Minecraft is having some issues with their realms. They pushed out an update that completely destroyed realms.
Oh, good.
So, people.
I know what happened. They made the game compatible with Windows 11.
That's what it was. That's what it was. So it's been an interesting thing because the interesting part of it is people will go to websites and they'll be like, oh, is the server up or down? And that's all the information that is given. And so everyone's throwing this out there. So if you go on to, say, Twitter and you go to Mojang status, these guys that are on here, they roughly will tweet one thing a day about it. And it's usually, we are still working hard to get this up and going. Now, it's been interesting. So there's just this timeline of what's happened. So the realm's been up and down, and what's gotten to the point, so this latest one that they have said, listener, was, we are still hard at work to bring realms back online for all players. As of now, roughly 70% of players should have access. As part of this, we work to have had to block traffic to realms on a previous version. So you have to make sure your Minecraft is updated all the way. But then you may be in the 30% that still can't get in.
Yeah.
But as you dig deeper into this, what's funny as we've been looking is the 30% are the people that are the people paying for the realm. So
What?
I want to do a test. Landon, Caleb, will you get on your phones or whatever Minecraft thing you have? Will you go and look and see if you can get on a realm? Because I can't see. Here's the thing. I can't even see it. I can't even see that I have a subscription, but guess what? I pay for it. But I've had everyone else that I have in the servers, in the realms, they can get on, they can do whatever. But I can't even look at it. But it's funny because you look at some of I scrolled comments, which you shouldn't do, but I did because I'm curious to see. But most people have said that it's the people that pay for it can't get in, but it's everyone they've invited, friends and family, that can play in the servers. So I wanted to do a test to see if this works. So can you guys, number one, see the servers when they come up, and two, can you get in, like click and you're in and playing? I'm kind of curious.
I can see both servers that we are involved with, and I am now in the Calling All Platforms server that we have. I'm playing the game, running around. I am fully involved in this game right now. That is funny.
Now, I'm going to do the same thing. We're all on the phones here, right?
Interesting.
I'm kind of curious. Can you, Caleb?
I'm currently stuck on a fetching realms thing.
That's the issue right there. You
it
can't
is
even
not
see
showing up. It does show Landon as being joinable, though.
But it's funny because you can't join him.
Yeah,
see, I have this as well. The fetching.
He's on the same version of the game as I am. But if I try to join, it is not doing anything. So
I just exited that realm. I'm trying to load the other realm that we have, and I'll see how it goes. It's loading.
Yeah, it'll load right up for you. But like if you're in this 30%, like it's any device too. So like I've tried it on. I was doing an experiment last night. Actually, we tried it on the PC. I tried it on the phone and the Xbox. And I didn't try it on the Switch or anything, but that's what they said. Now, those of you that listener, if you have a Switch, they actually have blocked the Switch entirely until they can get an update to the Switch, is what they last had said on that tweet.
Huh.
So whatever update they pushed to crash I don't know what happened. They haven't said anything. No, there's no info. Like the only info is something like this where it says, we are still hard at work.
Oh boy.
Now, like I said, I can see both realms. I was able to get into both realms. It does show on the side a little book with a notification on that. I don't know.
That's new. That's Realm Stories. So, like, if you click on that and you opt in to do that, it basically will say, like, oh, hey, Landon, you found an abandoned mine shaft at this location. Okay. Or, oh, hey, Landon, you found this biome over here. Or if you
that's
took a
just
picture
a new
of your
feature
stadium
for realms in general.
Yeah, so you can take a picture of your stadium and post it, and then it'll give everyone, hey, go see this at this location.
Yeah, I was able to get in just fine. It took a second to load, but not any longer than it normally did, so it worked fine for me.
So, like, I haven't been able to access it for like 4 days, like
that is
at all. Period.
Amazing.
But that's so, listener, if you're having some, and what this is the thing is, like, if you don't know how to navigate where to find this information, like I mean. I just went on Twitter and I went to the Mojang status to see what they have there, and that's all they give. There's not a lot of info right now, other than that. And then the collective people obviously have to shift through all the people that don't know how to leave a good reply. But I have found out that it's the majority is people that pay for the realm.
Oh boy,
that is so funny.
So. It's kind of interesting. So if you see issues, you see that it is getting worked on, and that's all I could tell you. So, yeah, I figured I'd bring that to light because I mean, I know there's a lot of people that play Minecraft on the realms, and so that could be an issue. What's happening. So,
yep.
So just so you know, people, if you are getting in there, like the owner cannot change it from hard difficulty to peaceful. So you be careful, be aware. And the person can't go and back it up if something happens or blows up. So just
Yeah.
be aware. Yeah. So kind of funny, I guess, but I'm glad that I'm paying for Landon to hop in. So if you're having issues, that's kind of what's happening. The information I have been able to find that is a reliable source. So, all right, and that's pretty much it for gaming. I know this week they have there's Gamescom this week, so we'll probably be hearing a lot of stuff this week going on with all gaming in general. I expect a lot of things. A lot of games, so we'll be touching up on that later. Doesn't look like we have any Doom news, so I think we're at the end of the episode. Unless, Landon, you have one more thing for us?
No, I don't.
I love the wait. All right, dear listener, we appreciate you listening. If you want to get a hold of us, you can at our social media websites on the platforms there. Also at callingallplatforms.com. You can also go over to YouTube and subscribe to our channel over there. There might be a video coming soon. I don't know. Soon could be within a year to 3. Who knows?
Yep, that's soon. We're talking on geologic timescales.
That's
so
what
pretty
we're
much
going for.
anything is soon.
You should have seen your face when you're like, soon? Oh yeah, a year. Okay. That's true. All right, dear listener, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.